Director of the Office of Science and Technology in the Executive Office of the President of the United States. Prior to joining the Obama administration, Dr. Holdren was Professor of Environmental Policy and Director of the Program on Science, Technology, and Public Policy at the Kennedy School of Government, and Professor of Environmental Science and Policy in the Department of Earth and Planetary Sciences at Harvard University. Dr. Holdren holds degrees in aerospace engineering and theoretical plasma physics from MIT and Stanford University. He is the author of hundreds of publications on global environmental change, energy technology and policy, nuclear arms control and non-proliferation, and science and technology policy. Before joining the Obama administration and besides teaching at Harvard University, Dr. Holdren also taught at the California Institute of Technology and the University of California, Berkeley. Once again, on behalf of the National University of Science and Technology, MISIS, we are quite pleased and honored to host Dr. Holdren. We very much look forward to his presentation entitled Common Challenges and Shared Opportunities for the United States and Russia in Science, Technology, and Innovation, and Update. And if you would please hold questions, and at the end we'll have an opportunity for you to ask Dr. Holdren questions. You may ask in Russian, you may ask in English, as you choose. Please, Dr. Holdren.
Well, thank you very much. It's certainly a great pleasure to be here at the National University of Science and Technology, MISIS. And I had the pleasure of meeting earlier today, as well as yesterday, with your former rector, now Minister Ivanov, and I had the pleasure of meeting just earlier this afternoon with your current rector, Professor Chernikova. And I'm very excited about the vision of the leadership of this university, the work that's being done here. I just had a chance to visit some of your laboratories. It's a very exciting place. And I have to say, in a way, I envy the young people in the audience as you are embarking on such exciting careers at such an exciting time in science and technology. I'm going to cover quite a lot of ground in this lecture. I'll start by talking about what I mean by the common challenges and opportunities that both of our countries face in science, technology, and innovation. I'll talk a little bit about some of the Obama administration policies around science, technology, and innovation, in particular the areas listed here: innovation strategy, energy and environment, human spaceflight, and public-private partnerships in science, technology, and innovation. And then I'll turn to the partnerships we have between the United States and the Russian Federation in science, technology, and innovation, and talk about the items listed at the bottom of the slide here. Let me start with what I call pervasive challenges that are linked to science, technology, and innovation. By pervasive, I mean these are challenges that exist everywhere around the globe. One is the challenge of creating and then sustaining economic prosperity, where science, technology, and innovation play a role as drivers of economic prosperity, of creating high-quality jobs, of creating sustainable economic advance. Particularly important these days are the domains listed: information technology, biotechnology, nanotechnology, advanced manufacturing, but there are many more. Challenges linked to healthcare. How do we get better outcomes in health for more of our citizens at lower cost? Challenges related to energy. How do we get affordable, reliable, and clean energy? Reducing dependence on oil and reducing pollution at the same time. A variety of other challenges in resources and environment. Challenges around water, around land use, around the management of our coastal zones, toxic substances, biodiversity, sustainability, all enormous challenges in which science, technology, and innovation will play major roles. And of course, national and homeland security, where there are a variety of issues where, again, science and technology play an important role. And these are issues that are as important in the Russian Federation as they are in the United States. And then there's the category I call global challenges. They differ from pervasive challenges in that they are global in their dynamics and they need to be global in their solutions. In the health domain, defeating preventable and pandemic disease. Like the other problems on this list, this is not a problem that any one country acting alone can deal with. These diseases cross national boundaries very readily. The challenge of development. How do we eradicate poverty and provide the possibility of sustainable prosperity for everyone on the planet? This is not just a matter of generosity, it's a matter of self-interest, because ultimately the political stability of the planet depends on everyone being able to achieve a decent standard of living. The global energy and climate challenge. How do we provide for societies everywhere the energy that their economies need without destroying the climate that their environments need? And of course, the challenge today is that over 80% of the world's energy is coming from burning fossil fuels, whose emissions of carbon dioxide are placing in peril the climate for everybody. Land and water. How do we manage the growing competition for the world's land and fresh water among the different critical uses we have for those resources? Production of food, of fiber, of fuel, the use of land for infrastructure and industry, and the use of land and water to maintain the functions of the ecosystem on which all of us continue to depend. The challenges of the oceans. We all live, in a sense, on one global ocean, and it is a global challenge to maintain the ecological integrity and the productivity of that global ocean. And finally, challenges of weapons of mass destruction. Again, a global challenge. How do we avoid the use anywhere in the world of nuclear or biological weapons? President Obama came to office with this pledge from his inaugural address in January 2009, when he said, "We will restore science to its rightful place." What President Obama meant by that was his understanding that science, technology, and innovation are absolutely crucial to the solution of all of the challenges that I've described here. And without putting science and technology in the center of our thinking, our decision-making, our policy-making, we would not succeed in addressing these challenges. We started off very early in the Obama administration developing something we call our innovation strategy. And it consists of several elements. The first is investing in what we call the building blocks or the foundations of innovation. What are those? Improving our performance in science, mathematics, and engineering education. It's one of the building blocks. Strengthening fundamental research, investing in basic research, and investing in the institutions that do basic research, which of course includes, above all, our research universities like this one, like MIT, which is represented here, and others. The third building block is the infrastructure that supports science, technology, and innovation. That means high-speed computing, it means broadband and wireless, it means the energy and transportation and communications infrastructure on which all of our activities in science, technology, and innovation depend. And the last building block is what we call an advanced information technology ecosystem, meaning an array of capabilities, processes, and services around information technology, big data, high-speed computing connectivity that is so essential to innovation in the modern world. A second major ingredient of the strategy is to promote market-based innovation, to accelerate innovation in the private sector using a research and experimentation tax credit, that is, giving private companies, which in the United States support almost 70% of all the research and development in the United States, supported by private companies, and we want to encourage more of that by giving a tax credit, an increased and more reliable tax credit for companies that invest in research and experimentation. Encouraging entrepreneurship based on innovation with a variety of kinds of policies, including tax policy, immigration policy, intellectual property policy, and more. Increasing our investments in ingenuity with the help of an effective intellectual property rights policy, and that involved reforming the U.S. patent system. And promoting innovative, open, and competitive markets to further encourage innovation. A third set of ingredients of the innovation strategy is to invest on the government side in breakthroughs that will address national priorities, to unleash, for example, a clean energy revolution, to accelerate biotech and nanotech and advanced manufacturing, to develop breakthroughs in space applications, and to drive breakthroughs in healthcare technology, all of those national priorities. And finally, to create a leap forward in the use of educational technologies, technologies to advance the process of learning itself. All of these efforts in the Obama Innovation Strategy include increasing support for scientists and engineers early in their careers, commercializing university research, accelerating the process by which discovery in university laboratories gets translated into practical products, investing in multidisciplinary and high-risk, high-return research, which are domains that are not sufficiently invested in by the private sector. And all of this, I should say, ended up being embraced as the blueprint for U.S.-Russian cooperation on innovation by our two presidents in June of 2010. Some specific initiatives that the Obama administration has launched in domains of great importance. In terms of energy and environment, when the Obama administration came into office in 2009, first thing we did was get through Congress a Recovery Act intended to help the United States out of an economic recession. And that Recovery Act, in its some $800 billion of investments overall, included $80 billion for clean and efficient energy alone, over $100 billion for technology and science altogether. We've made very large increases in the funding in the Department of Energy for clean and efficient new energy sources. We created an Advanced Research Projects Agency for Energy, an entirely new agency investing in high-risk, high-return research, and have created 5 energy innovation hubs that are public-private partnerships in which universities, private firms, government laboratories all work together on major energy innovation challenges. One of them is focused on batteries, one is focused on energy-efficient buildings, one is focused on direct production of fuel from sunlight, one on advanced modeling of nuclear reactor performance, and the 5th one on critical materials for energy technologies. We are now investing in the U.S. government over $2.5 billion a year in the U.S. Global Change Research Program, focused on understanding the science of climate change and how climate change is affecting socioeconomic sectors across society, and focused increasingly on what we can do not only to mitigate climate change, to slow down the pace and decrease the ultimate magnitude of climate change, but also to adapt to the degree of climate change that we do not succeed in avoiding. And we've been pursuing a new 4-year national climate assessment, which is now out for public comment in its initial draft, looking in great detail, regionally and sectorally, at impacts of climate on the United States, climate change on the United States, and what can be done about it. The Obama administration created strict new combined fuel economy and carbon dioxide tailpipe standards for passenger vehicles, and is now in the process of putting out such standards for trucks as well. The President created in July of 2010 a new national oceans policy, the first time the United States has had a national policy on care and management of the oceans, and a National Oceans Council to implement that policy, consisting of the cabinet secretaries of all of the relevant departments. I am the co-chair of that council, together with the chair of the Council on Environmental Quality in the U.S. government. This is just a picture of President Obama and Vice President Biden visiting a rooftop photovoltaic array in Denver, Colorado. Turning now to space policy, I call this a reset for NASA. When we came into office, NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, was in some disarray. Its human exploration program, called Constellation, was hopelessly behind schedule and over budget. The NASA missions in science, technology, robotic exploration of space, space telescopes, Earth observation, aeronautics, and the International Space Station were all being put in jeopardy by the cost overruns of the Constellation program. So we needed a reset. We needed to rebalance the space policy, and we did that in a number of ways. We slimmed down Constellation. We put Constellation on a diet, and we retargeted it. Instead of trying to return astronauts to the surface of the moon 50 years after we did it the first time, President Obama announced a new target, which is to land astronauts on an asteroid by 2025. A more demanding goal, but also a newer one and a more relevant one. The relevance, of course, of landing on an asteroid and developing the technologies needed to do that, the relevance of that was underlined on February 15th by the asteroid explosion over Chelyabinsk and the close call flyby of an asteroid 3 times larger on the same day, indicated that the capacity to approach an asteroid and ultimately to move one out of its trajectory could become extremely important for society at a future time. We increased the emphasis on using commercial firms, private firms, to deliver crew and cargo into low Earth orbit, the more routine human space missions. We agreed with our partners in the International Space Station, which of course include Russia as a very important partner, to extend the operation of the International Space Station to 2020. Under the previous program, the International Space Station would have been crashed into the ocean in 2016 before its scientific and technological potential had been achieved. And the reason that would have been done would be to save the money for operating the International Space Station, to pour that money into a giant rocket whose main purpose was to carry astronauts to the International Space Station. It made absolutely no sense at all. So we cut the rocket and put the money into continuing the operation of the ISS. And of course, we are in close partnership with Russia, which is now providing all of the crew, launch, and return services for the International Space Station for both U.S. and Russian astronauts. And we also restored support for the other NASA programs that were in peril. This is a picture of the first private space capsule to dock successfully with the International Space Station. This is produced by the SpaceX Corporation, and this is the first docking, which took place in May 2012. This capsule, at this point, is carrying only cargo, not astronauts. But in the future, the same capsule will be outfitted for commercial flights of astronauts to the International Space Station. See, I can go too far here. Initiatives around information technology and innovation, a whole set of initiatives were launched by the Obama administration, including greater use of information technology to allow government, making government data sets available in support of innovation and entrepreneurship, big data, a $200 million initiative focused on managing and manipulating the increasing amounts of data that are coming from all directions, from genomics, from space studies, from fundamental physics, from public health. US Ignite is an initiative aimed at facilitating the expansion of high-speed broadband around the country and developing new applications that use that high-speed broadband for economic purposes. And finally, a relatively new initiative called the Presidential Innovation Fellows, where people who are engaged in high technology activities across the society are invited to drop everything they're doing for 6 months to a year and come to Washington and work in the government on applying advanced technology, particularly information technology, to innovation challenges in the government. This has been an enormous success. In the first cohort, 18 people were selected from 700 applicants. In the new cohort, we have 2,700 applicants for 36 openings. Very successful. Open government, as I mentioned, involves opening government data to the public in an unprecedented way. Data.gov, this is available on the internet. You can all access it yourself to find access to an extraordinary array of data sets accumulated by the United States government. Partnerships with the private sector, very important component of President Obama's strategy. He's been very clear that the challenges we face are so big and the resources available to address them so limited that we need to cooperate. And we need to cooperate across sectors, the public, the private, the NGO sector, and of course we need to cooperate among countries, which is the purpose of my visit here and which I will get to in a moment. But in terms of public-private partnerships, we launched a big partnership in January of 2011, something called Startup America, which is aimed at bolstering entrepreneurship by increasing the success rate for people who start new companies based on advanced technology. We passed, with the help of the Congress, an act called the Jobs Act, Jumpstart Our Business Startups, which allows for new ways of funding innovation in high technology fields and simplifies the task of entrepreneurs in a number of ways. We have something called the Wireless Innovation and Infrastructure Initiative, which aims to connect 98% of the U.S. population to fourth-generation wireless. We have an advanced manufacturing partnership, which is linking research universities, high technology companies, and the federal government to apply emerging technologies to creating high technology manufacturing jobs. The President's National Robotics Initiative and something we call the Materials Genome Initiative, which is an attempt to do for materials development what we've done for genomics, basically cut in half the time and cost needed to develop new materials, are all part of this goal. And we have, from the National Science Foundation, something called the Innovation Corps, which is aimed at getting scientists out of the laboratories to start new companies. Part of this effort to grease the path, if you will, to lubricate the path from discoveries in laboratories to practical applications in the marketplace. Let me turn now to the topic of U.S.-Russian Federation partnerships on science, technology, and innovation. This starts with the Framework Agreement on Science and Technology Cooperation, first established with the former Soviet Union in 1982 and then renewed with the Russian Federation in 1992. This is the oversight agreement for all science and technology cooperation between our two countries. It's implemented through a ministerial-level joint commission on science and technology cooperation, which I co-chair with Minister Levanov, the former rector of your university. And as I mentioned, it oversees, promotes, and facilitates all cooperation between the United States and Russia in all the domains of science, biomedicine, agriculture, energy, space, and more. It is due for renegotiation in 2015, and that will be one of the continuing focuses of our joint work. augmented since 2010 by science, technology, and innovation-related working groups of the Bilateral Presidential Commission, which was created in that year. And my colleagues and I are here now in Russia for the fourth meeting of the Science and Technology Working Group in that Bilateral Presidential Commission. But as you see from this list, there are many working groups in that commission which are linked in various ways to science and technology, and there's an overall steering group which coordinates the entire effort. I just want to show you here a joint statement from June 2010 when this Bilateral Presidential Commission was set up on a strategic partnership between the two countries in innovation. I will not read that to you. To save my voice, I'll let you read it yourselves while I take a sip of water. And a very strong statement about the importance of cooperation in this domain by the two presidents. In the Science and Technology Working Group that I co-chaired with Minister Levanov and previously co-chaired with his predecessor, Minister Fursenko, we had a set of initial focuses that included nanoscience and technology. Under that heading, fundamental nanoscience, nanomaterials for clean and efficient energy, and environment, health, and safety issues around nanoscience. A second focus was climate change science and technology, looking particularly at high latitudes of great interest to both of our countries, sea ice, permafrost, peatlands, wildfires in the northern forests, looking at short-term forcers of climate change, particularly methane and black carbon, and looking at weather extremes associated with climate change, floods, droughts, heat waves, and looking finally at science and technology for adaptation to climate change. Another focus which is now emerging is a focus on natural hazards in a number of categories. Geohazards, meaning earthquakes, landslides, volcanoes. Hydrologic hazards, floods, droughts, tsunamis. Hazards from space weather coming from solar eruptions. And of course, near-Earth objects, asteroids and comets, which can threaten the Earth. And the focus, of course, is on detection, prediction, mitigation, response, and recovery for all of these kinds of natural hazards. We also have a focus on basic research and higher education, which includes the Basic Research and Higher Education Program. It includes peer-reviewed research grant programs, including those of CRDF Global. It includes something called the Technology Entrepreneurship Development Program, looking in a cooperative way at some of the initiatives around entrepreneurship that I discussed in the context of the United States. And we have a focus on overcoming obstacles to cooperation, issues around visas, around access to marine areas for research, around taxation and customs. And of course, the biggest obstacle to cooperation is there's not enough money. And so we're looking at new mechanisms for funding joint research between the two countries. There's another area of long-standing partnership on science, technology, and innovation between the United States and Russia, and that is cooperation to reduce the dangers from nuclear weapons. I've actually been involved in that cooperation since the early 1970s, at the height of the Cold War. More recently, we have the New START agreement, which reduces the strategic nuclear forces of both the United States and Russia. We have a new protocol to the 2000 Agreement on Management and Disposition of Plutonium from dismantled surplus nuclear weapons in both countries. We have agreed non-proliferation provisions of the 123 Agreement on Peaceful Uses of Nuclear Energy. And I turn finally to our partnerships in space, which again have been very long-standing. Both countries, as I've already mentioned, are major partners in the $100 billion International Space Station. Its construction production, its operation, its crew, its science experiments are heavily participated in by both Russia and the United States. The U.S.-Russian Federation agreement on the transport of U.S. astronauts to the International Space Station using the Russian Soyuz capsule and rocket was recently extended through 2016. There are Russian instruments on NASA's robotic missions to the Moon and Mars, and there are U.S. instruments on Russian robotic missions. These are cooperative missions. We have a joint working group between the two countries on space and life sciences. And we are in discussion of bilateral cooperation on crewed exploration missions, human exploration missions in deep space, that is beyond low Earth orbit. This is just a picture of the Martian Science Lab, Curiosity, on the Martian surface, a self-portrait made from cameras on the device itself. And I mention this because there is a very important Russian instrument on this Mars Science Laboratory, this wonderful rover that is the size of a sport utility vehicle. And there's a Russian instrument on there that is going to be crucial in the search for signs of life on Mars, past or present. So it's a wonderful continuing example of the cooperation between our two countries. Cooperation on energy. There's been extensive cooperation on reactor safety between the two countries ever since Chernobyl. The 123 agreement dating from January 2011 includes cooperation between the two countries on advanced power reactor designs and innovative fuel types. Russia is currently supplying 40% of the uranium fuel used in U.S. nuclear power reactors. We are major partners in the International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor ITER, the attempt to see if fusion can be made into a practical energy source. And we have extensive additional cooperation focused on clean energy and energy efficiency through the Energy Working Group of the Bilateral Presidential Commission. I want to say finally a few words about the Skolkovo project. This, of course, is a public-private academic partnership aimed at creating a new world-class, innovation-oriented technological university on the outskirts of Moscow, and an associated distributed technopark, which will have research focuses on energy, nuclear issues, information technology, biomedicine, and space. It's being done in collaboration principally with MIT, but there are also a variety of forms of collaboration with Imperial College and the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. There are 700 corporate partners, including from the United States, a list of major blue chip corporations. Skolkovo is just getting started, but I expect it is going to be a great success. And with that, I will close my remarks, and thank you very much for your attention. So we are open for questions. Did everyone fall asleep during my remarks?
Some system for supporting cooperative research projects. Or we just have some cooperation movement to this.
Now, many of the agreements we have include support for the cooperation that's going on. And we have some specific major programs. I mentioned CRDF Global, which has funded many tens of millions of dollars of joint research. The National Science Foundation has a program for funding joint research between the United States and Russia, and is funding such research. In some of the categories I talked about, the funding is coming primarily from the responsible government agencies on the two sides. For example, from the Department of Energy on the U.S. side and its Russian counterpart, from Roshydromet on the Russian side, and NOAA, the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration on the U.S. side. So there are many mechanisms for funding research between our two countries. That is not to say it's enough. As I mentioned, one of our challenges is to find more financial support for this joint research. And it's something that we, on both sides of this collaboration, are working very hard on.
John, I work on hydrogen technology. I just want your comment about the future of hydrogen technology.
Well, I think hydrogen technology has a bright future, but not in the very short term. I think hydrogen technology is enormously attractive because of the very high efficiency of fuel cell conversion of hydrogen to electricity, because of the very clean burning characteristics of hydrogen when used in combustion engines, and because there is a very wide variety of ways to produce hydrogen from different primary energy sources. We can produce hydrogen from sunlight, we can produce it from nuclear energy, we can produce it from fossil energy. In the case of fossil energy, hydrogen is likely to be one route by which we strip the carbon off of the fossil energy, store the carbon away from the atmosphere, and use the hydrogen. The challenges, as you well know, are in the economics and the intersection of the economics and the technology. What we need is technologies that can make the use of hydrogen more economical. We have a dilemma with respect to hydrogen and many of the other advanced technologies. The dilemma is that fossil fuels are so inexpensive today that it is very hard for new technologies to compete. And of course, one of the solutions to that would be if we restricted the carbon dioxide emissions from fossil fuels, or made emitters pay for those emissions, then the cost differential between the new technologies and currently inexpensive fossil fuel technologies would be greatly reduced or would disappear.
Еще вопросы? А студент есть?
Hello. Thank you very much. Your lecture was very interesting for me. I think technology are extremely useful nowadays, and we can't imagine our lives without them. For example, for me, I can live without my iPhone. I have, however, I have a few questions to ask for you. Don't you think that such rapid development of technology kills humanity in people? This first question.
I didn't quite understand all of the question. It had to do with technology and people, but I missed the verb.
Слушай, вопрос еще раз, пожалуйста.